Okay, let's unpack this. For many of us, when we think about the English language in India, the story we hear is, well, it's almost always the same. It's Macaulay's legacy. It gets painted as this, painful colonial import, something that undermines our national languages, our traditions.
That narrative is absolutely dominant, and you can see why it's very
Yep.
compelling. It drives policies that argue, development education should happen exclusively through mother tongues or national languages.
Right.
And in that framing, English is always the unwelcome intruder that needs to be sidelined.
Exactly. But the sources we're looking at today dive into a completely different, and I'd say more historically powerful perspective.
A very different one.
We're not looking at English as just a relic of conquest, but as a tool of upliftment. Our mission here is to really explore the alternative history of this language, one we can properly call Ambedkar's English.
And this deep dive is so crucial because that policy question, which language medium should schools use, it's completely loaded.
It's not just academic.
Not at all. It's a conflict rooted in class, in caste, and in access to opportunity. So if you really want to understand the profound historical stakes behind what looks like a simple policy debate, you need to know why millions of people still see English as a language of liberation, not subjugation.
So let's start with that immediate political friction, because that's where the opposition to English is, well, it's most visible today.
Right.
The sources cite this really strong antagonism toward English medium in government schools, and it's often coming directly from the highest levels of governance.
And that opposition is highly institutionalized. I mean, you look at the BJP and the RSS, for example. They view this pushback against English as part of a much broader nationalist agenda.
An agenda that favors
Yeah.
Sanskrit, Hindi.
Exactly. Favoring Sanskrit and focusing heavily on promoting Hindi in central universities. The sources even note a massive allocation of funds towards Sanskrit, which suggests a very clear prioritization of ancient or national languages over English in public education.
But the sources also point to a detail here that it really complicates the picture. It suggests the motivation isn't purely ideological.
Yeah.
They highlight that some key political figures, leaders like Narendra Modi, Amit Shah, Mohan Bhagwat, are reported to show antipathy toward English, partly because they themselves, well, they may lack fluency in speaking and writing it comfortably.
Which fundamentally shifts the debate, doesn't it? When a political stance might be influenced by personal comfort levels, the policy decision becomes less about national welfare and, maybe more about personal preference or convenience.
And it plays out regionally, too.
Oh, absolutely. We see this with figures like Venkaiah Naidu and M.V. Ramana, particularly in the Telugu states. They've expressed this deep anxiety about allowing rural students in government schools to get an English medium education.
And this anxiety, it leads us directly to the central contradiction the sources just read. They hammer it home. The paradox of the elite. These leaders, the very same ones who push for regional languages or Hindi dominance for the public, they simultaneously send their own children to the most expensive, exclusive private English medium schools and universities.
Often run by powerful conglomerates like Ambani, Adani, and Birla, yeah.
It's
the linguistic equivalent of pulling up the ladder behind them. The source material gives this fascinating example of the disconnect, using Ramoji Rao, the head of the Inadu Media Group.
Oh, this one is? It's amazing.
For years, he was a vehement opponent of English medium in government schools.
And the specifics are astounding. Ramoji Rao actively tried to avoid English words in his Telugu newspaper. The sources say he went so far as to substitute a really lengthy Telugu phrase for the simple English term rail ticket in his editorial policy.
But here's the profound irony. His family members, all educated in English medium institutions. There's a school run in his wife's name that operates in English medium.
And his businesses.
And look at the names of his enterprises. His massive center for film production is named the highly anglicized Ramoji Film City. His family's hotels are called Dolphin, a name that could so easily, so naturally be translated into Telugu. Why the choice?
That is the question, isn't it? Why unconsciously accept the global reach and the economic power of English for your own private empire while actively denying it to the state's public school children?
The sources offer a pretty compelling sociological answer. They argue the opposition isn't truly about culture or national pride. It's about socio-political control.
Control.
There's a fear that if the common working people, the Shramajievi generations, if they master this world language, they will become intellectuals.
And what does that mean for the status quo?
It means they become intellectuals capable of challenging the ruling class. They get the tools to articulate dissent, to access global information, and to fundamentally destabilize the established hierarchy. A hierarchy where only the elite's children hold the keys to professional success.
So the policy is just a mask.
It acts as a mechanism to maintain a stratified society, masked as cultural protection.
To really see how English operates as this engine for mobility, we have to look away from the current political conflict and look back.
Yeah, to a crucial historical counterexample the sources point to.
The life and policy of Kamaraj Nadar.
He is a figure who stands as this powerful testament to the liberating power of the language. Kamaraj, for anyone who might not be familiar with his stature, he was a political kingmaker in national politics.
Right.
Instrumental in elevating figures like Lal Bahadur Shastri and Indira Gandhi to the prime ministership.
And yet his personal background it was so far from the elite status he achieved.
Completely. He was born into the Nadar caste, which had historically faced immense discrimination, often classed as untouchable. He dropped out of school after just the 3rd grade, studied under a tree. He was a product of the non-English speaking majority.
So what did he do when he gained power?
Well, when he became the 2-time chief minister of Tamil Nadu, he didn't implement a policy based on his own linguistic comfort.
No. Instead, he established a stable, enduring, bilingual school education system English alongside Tamil, placing them on an equal footing.
And that decision could not have been easy. He was actively countering this powerful, entrenched linguistic dominance that was being championed by political figures like Annadurai and Krunanidhi.
Oh, absolutely. They were focused heavily on Tamil nationalism. But Kamaraj understood, perhaps even more profoundly than Nehru did, that English was a necessary link, not just for the elite, but for the entire state, for the country's future.
He saw the bigger picture.
That was his political genius. He recognized that without access to a world language, the historically oppressed people of Tamil Nadu would remain geographically and economically confined no matter how strong their regional language skills were. He saw English as an economic necessity.
And what was the measurable result of this stable bilingualism? What happened?
Well, the sources credit Kamaraj's policy with transforming Tamil Nadu into what they call a protective shield state for its historically marginalized populations.
The BC, SC, and ST communities. Exactly. The backward classes, scheduled castes, and scheduled tribes. That stability and foresight. It enabled an incredible transformation.
So people could move.
It allowed people from all Tamil castes, particularly those who were disadvantaged, to successfully spread across the world, thriving in global professions. The sources even reference global figures like Kamala Harris and Sundar Pichai as specific examples of people who were indebted to this foundational bilingual educational structure.
Wow.
It just proves that English, when it's provided universally, functions as a powerful engine for worldwide connection and social upliftment, not just a colonial imposition.
So the Kamaraj story really shows how English works for the masses in practice. But to understand the why, the deep, profound reason this language became a spiritual and intellectual necessity, we have to turn to the core concept. What exactly is Ambedkar's English?
This argument is. It's rooted in some very deep social history. The sources remind us that for groups like the Dalits and the Shudras groups that have been violently denied education generation after generation, from the time of Harappa right up until Ambedkar's birth in 1891.
For them, English represented the only clean slate.
The only clean slate. And that was recognized early on. 19th century reformers, figures like Savitri Bai Phule and Mahatma Phule, they'd already identified what the sources call the anti-slavery characteristic of the English language.
What does that mean?
They realized that this language offered a tool to dismantle domestic caste dominance, even while they were fighting against British dominance.
Right. And Ambedkar took that idea and ran with it.
Yes. He understood this explicitly. He didn't just adopt English. He wielded it as a weapon of liberation against the caste system.
Yeah.
And think about the magnitude of this strategic choice. He knew his people often lacked literacy, even in their own regional languages.
And yet
he chose to write everything in English.
Everything. From his very first sociological essay, Caste in India, which, laid the foundation for his life's work.
All the way to his final seminal work, The Buddha and His Dhamma.
He was writing for an audience far beyond his immediate community, far beyond India itself.
And this is a deliberate contrast the sources draw with other major figures of the era.
Like Gandhi.
Like Gandhi, who primarily wrote key texts, Hindi Swaraj or My Experiment with Truth in Gujarati, translated them later. Gandhi saw English differently, But for Ambedkar, it was the necessary instrument to challenge an ancient system of oppression on a global stage.
So why was that specific to English? I mean, couldn't he have used, say, Marathi, his native language, to reach his people?
That's the critical insight of Ambedkar's choice. Regional languages, the sources argue, serve to isolate the oppressed.
Isolate them.
They trap exploited groups, Dalits, Adivasis, Shudras, in separate linguistic rooms. They prevent solidarity.
But English, it breaks down those walls.
Exactly. English unites them. It allows them to communicate their shared struggle, to articulate their strength, and to communicate their plight globally. It gives them the vocabulary of rights, of justice, of modern governance that they needed to fight a millennia-old system. It enables them to become a cohesive political force across all those linguistic boundaries.
And when we look at the practical application of this fluency, the sources pose that compelling final question. Could Ambedkar have made the world-convincing arguments he did at the roundtable conferences in London, or steered the drafting of the Indian Constitution in the Constituent Assembly without absolute fluency and mastery of English?
And the conclusion is so powerful. He used that fluency not for personal fame, not for writing novels or stories to entertain people, but specifically and strategically to liberate millions who'd have been enslaved for thousands of years.
Yeah.
English, in his hands, was pure political and social artillery.
So what does this profound historical analysis mean for you, the listener, today? I mean, we see this struggle continuing right now.
We do.
The sources cite a 40-year fight for English medium education in government schools in the Telugu states, a fight that has only recently resulted in the long-awaited introduction of bilingual textbooks.
And that fight confirms that parents, regardless of their own fluency, they intuitively grasp the stakes of access. The essential message from the sources is clear. Do not be misled by the political narrative that English is merely Macaulay's language.
In the context of India's deeply stratified social history, where language has historically been weaponized to restrict knowledge and maintain caste hierarchy, the sources argue English has evolved. It is, unequivocally, Ambedkar's language.
It remains a profound, accessible tool for social mobility, for global connectivity, and for protection against systemic exploitation. It's the language that allows the marginalized to find unity, breaking the physical and political walls of linguistic isolation.
Which brings us to our final thought. If English truly is a global, unifying language that provides access and benefits to the oppressed, what existing regional or national narratives might be actively preventing a new generation right now from wielding this tool?
And what are the true non-linguistic motivations, the motivations centered entirely on maintaining power and privilege that lie behind that obstruction? Something to think about long after this dive is over.